Greetings and salutations, Scribblers. I'm Katie, the founder and CEO of the Scribblers Den, and today we're talking about writing friends. When I interview authors, they all say the same thing. Finding your writing people and investing in those friendships are what really has kept them going and allowed them to navigate the rough seas of the publishing industry. Personally, I am a big friendship person. Friendships are my top tier, number one relationship status. And having those intimate, emotional, and mental relationships is so important to my own mental and emotional health. It allows me to relax, to take a deep breath, and know that even when I'm not at my greatest, I am still loved and supported. So, how does that impact writing? I have people in my life who aren't writers who have read my manuscripts, and they have politely asked me about my writing or how it's going, but they don't get it, right? I can tell them that I've spent a year writing this, but that doesn't sink in with them the way that it does with another writer. The non-writer envisions me happily sitting in front of my keyboard, just tapping away to the keys to create my masterpiece. The fellow writer, however, knows that that's only a fraction of the process. They know about the tears, the hours spent staring off into space to figure out a plot hole, cursing my characters because yet again, they aren't following my suggestions. And that makes a huge difference. It makes me feel seen in a very different way. And this is why it's important to have friends in your writing space that are writers, right? Getting that support and validation from them just hits different because they get it. The specific understanding that another writer brings to the table is so valuable to me, whether I'm celebrating a win or struggling with a piece of the story. I can talk through that moment without having to explain the process. And because we all have our own methods, I'm likely to get some really great suggestions that support and help me to unlock my creativity. It is just absolutely magical. Another benefit of having writer friends is providing space for vulnerability, right? Writing is this very vulnerable process. We're revealing pieces of ourselves word by word on the page. And when we get critique or rejection, it can feel very personal. Your writing friends are there to help. And when I start to feel the inklings of imposter syndrome, my friends are right there with with their little spray bottles saying, "No, you are not an imposter," and then reminding me of all the amazing things in my writing. For rejection, it's kind of a given that when I get a pass on a query or when my friend gets a pass on a submission, we immediately respond with some version of, "They're lost. Too bad they can't recognize how brilliant of a writer you are." And to clarify, that is a platitude, and we have the utmost respect for our agents and editors. But in the moment, comforting each other is more important. We have to remind them, like, you know what, it is their loss. They've chosen to not want to represent you or not publish you for whatever reason. And we can respect their bad choice, right? And knowing my writing friends are going to respond with some version of just how batty the publishing professional is for not offering rep or a book deal, it's just really satisfying. And I think that's important to have those kind of people in your corner that you can just be raw in your emotions with, right? Be vulnerable. Because again, they get it. They've had their own close calls and they've experienced the same emotional turmoil, right? Now, of course, you have your close writing friends. It is not always fun and games. You're going to watch your writing friends sell books, be agented, or have opportunities that you're not getting. And that can be difficult. But having those discussions with your writing friends is also incredibly important. I have a lot of writing friends who are published and agented, and it can be really hard to not be jealous sometimes. But we also discuss those things. And my rule is that I want to be there to support and comfort no matter what my personal writing status is, because I love seeing them succeed, right? It's that shine theory that I've talked about in previous videos. When one of us gains momentum, the rest of us will rise up too. And that was something that I really had to unlearn a bit as I entered into writing. My instinct, the way society had taught me to behave, was that everything was a competition. That there could only be one person who could win. And that's just not true. Having that community, fostering those relationships, we all win when we do that. So through the help of my amazing writer friends, I've really shifted that viewpoint. And I'm so much happier being part of a community that lifts each other up rather than sees each other as competition. Finding your writing community is going to be its own journey. Of the many writers I've interacted with over my 12 years of being dedicated to my writing, I have two that I've grown incredibly close with. We travel together. We have a group chat. It's a writing space where I can just be fully vulnerable and find support in every facet of my journey. And we've really become friends as well, which is even more amazing. So we don't just support each other in our writing, we support each other through all sorts of things: work drama, friend drama, relationship drama, family drama, whatever it is. We have that there, and it's really just so amazing and impactful, right? I also have more like tertiary writing friends, and we don't interact as often, but we still fiercely support and encourage each other. Like we'll jump in and read through a scene or offer feedback or console or congratulate each other's publishing news. And sometimes that's just like twice a year I will talk to that person, or maybe once a year, or just really briefly, or I'll see that they posted something and then I'll repost it because I want to help, again, boost them up and give them whatever help that I can. So there's important to have all different levels of writing friends in your group. So you're going to have those people that you're like really close with, and some other ones that you're friends with and like you know of and you encourage and you boost up, but you don't interact with them as much, right? So you have all different levels. Which also, I want to touch on this whole idea, and it's my final talking point, is just about like the idea of healthy relationships, right? They take dedication and they take communication, whether it is writing friends, regular friends, or romance, whatever it is. It means showing up for your friends when they need it and lifting each other up along the way. Finding your writing community can feel really difficult sometimes in a world where social media and text messages are the common forms of communication. But you can still make really meaningful connections. Those two writing friends I mentioned earlier, I found them both on Twitter, back when Twitter was a hub for writers. And we live on opposite corners of the country, but we stay in touch. A day doesn't go by when we don't chat in our DMs. And like I said, we always plan like 1 or 2 yearly get-togethers. We try to go like on our own little mini writing retreat at one point, and then sometimes there's like smaller trips in between. Like I'll just go visit one or the other of them. And it's really great because we get to then in person do all the things that we would do in our DMs. We get to have those conversations face to face, usually while eating some really delicious food. So all this to say, find your community, reach out, comment on the thread or Instagram post that I have posted over on the Scribbler Den accounts. Also put it on Blue Sky, I think. Tell people about yourselves, right? Introduce yourselves, find some community. So head over there, pick what you want to do, and don't be afraid to just reach out to random people too. So if you're following somebody on Instagram or on Threads, tell people that you love the snippet that they posted or the aesthetic that they made for their novel. You never know, it might lead to a really magnificent writing friendship that will help you to keep going when publishing gets tough. So find your people and just keep lifting each other up. That is it. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Happy writing, Scribblers.